Hi, I'm Mark Sher. I'm the CEO and founder of Encompass Life and the developer of the Quantum Leap Technique and the host of the Wellness Revolution podcast, where we focus on people in the healthcare industry or contributing to the healthcare industry that are making breakthrough results and doing things differently than what we're currently doing here. So today I have Jason Leenaarts, guess, Leenaarts?
Leenaarts.
Leenaarts
Yeah.
on the call today, and he is the owner of Revolution Fitness and Therapy in Northeast Ohio. And Jason has a pretty unique story. I've spoke with him a couple of times, and he's doing some amazing things up in his area. And I'm glad to have you on the show, Jason.
Mark, thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it. Looking forward to a great conversation.
Awesome. So tell us a little bit about what you're doing.
Sure. So I'm always afraid when I give an introduction that I'm going to take us down some long weaving path that I can't get us out of, but I'll try to give the Reader's Digest version of the story. I did not grow up very athletic. I was really into music growing up, so I thought that I was going to conquer the world with a guitar and a microphone. But my standard for living was a little bit higher than playing in a band on the weekends was ever going to be able to afford me. So I was always holding down jobs where I was managing other businesses, spent a lot of time in retail, doing that kind of work. And along that path, and somewhere around the time I was in college, fell into drug addiction, and I was a drug addict for about 10 years. And early into that drug addiction, I sort of fell almost by accident into fitness. So I happened to see myself one night in the mirror and was on a cocktail of substances. I didn't like what I saw, and I thought maybe the way to improve this situation is to go and start lifting weights. And you may not be able to tell from our, where we're situated on the call, but I'm not a very big guy. I'm a pretty lean fella, and I've always been for most of my life. And somewhat shockingly, I weighed even less then than I do now. But I liked lifting weights, and it wasn't for me. It wasn't for the purposes of let's see how big and strong I can get. I just wanted to feel better. And
Mhm.
so, you fast forward a couple of years, and I, making it pretty consistent to get into exercise. And then I thought, well, maybe I need to start really watching some of the things that I eat and try to improve the quality of my diet. So I
Mhm.
did that. And then lo and behold, fast forward a few more years, and I got clean in 2006. So this year will mark 19 years clean
Wow.
by about this summer. And
What's your age, Jason?
I just turned 49.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So during the time after I got clean, I realized that fitness was going to be a part of my life. It was something I was doing consistently. I liked it, and I got a part-time job working at a gym. I really didn't like how manipulative the sales tactics were of that particular gym, and so I talked to the head trainer there, and I said, "Look, I'm already giving people fitness advice because they're signing up for memberships. What do I need to do to be a personal trainer? Because I was looking for some other option outside of retail and retail management." And so he's the one that kind of got me started thinking about, getting certified as a coach. And when I was in the process of getting certified, I really liked the nutrition side of things more than, say, all of the different variations that exercise physiology and that rabbit hole could lead you down. So
Mhm.
over the past 17 years that I've been coaching, most of my time and effort, money and energy has gone into learning what I could about nutrition to be the best coach that I could be. And I opened up my studio, which is called Revolution Fitness and Therapy, or shortened affectionately to Rev Fit, opened in the spring of 2009, and we've been going strong ever since then. So that's a relatively short introduction.
So you said you did drugs for 10 years as well?
Yes.
When did you start?
Say that again.
When did you start doing them?
What?
At what
What?
age?
Let's see. I would have started right before I turned 20 years of age.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so right around 1920, and I quit when I was right around 29, 30. So I normally just tell people that my 20s were the lost decade.
Gotcha. Wow.
Yeah.
And you said you did a cocktail of a lot of different things.
Yeah, initially it started, when they say things like weed is a gateway drug. I know it's not that way for everybody, but it was truly that way for me. So it started, somewhat innocuously with that. And then, around that time, the mid 90s, and the people that I was hanging out with was right around the time that the quote unquote rave scene was starting in America, starting to pick
Mm-hmm.
up steam. And so that's kind of what ushered in a lot of other
Wow.
options to me. So over time, what you find is that the kind of thing that you do just for fun on the weekends becomes something that kind of peppers its way into your weeks. And by the time I was getting to that point where it was time to stop, it became something that was, taking up the entirety of my day. So the likelihood that I was going to be not under the influence of something throughout the entire day was not very good. So,
Yeah.
you may not be doing the same combinations of things, but you're always under the influence. And, that and some other situations, and you think, okay, I think I've taken this train as far as I want to take it on these tracks.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
It's interesting. Interesting. Yeah, I got involved with some of that stuff too. And it's that's when you're on it, it takes time to clear the head after you get off of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, man, congratulations on your journey
Thank you.
and reversing that. That takes a lot of inner strength to do something like that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's something that too I tend to lose sight of. Sometimes people have to remind me that it was uh, quite an undertaking to
Hmm.
to get clean and to stay clean, and I tend to forget that that's actually the case. But sometimes you need that reminder. When you hear about someone that overdoses or they get arrested or whatever, like whatever worst case scenario you could think of, I have to remind myself how fortunate I was that those things didn't happen to me.
Gotcha. And I imagine is helping you with your clients, that your experience that you have for those 10 years.
Yeah. So the way that I started to look at it, kind of going back to what I mentioned previously, when I was getting certified as a coach, fat loss was something that was really interesting to me, even though I'd not gone through it personally. There are a lot of people in my space, in the health and fitness space, who they got their weight higher than they wanted it to be. They lost the weight. They became really inspired in that process, and they're like, I want to inspire people to do what I did. And I think that's a great story. That wasn't my story, but what I did see was that the place that drugs held in my life was that drugs were the answer to everything. If you're happy, there's drugs. If you're sad, there's drugs. If you're stressed out, there's drugs. And that doesn't give you a lot of options for more productive coping mechanisms.
Hmm.
And I started to see a lot of parallels between the way that people often treat food and the way that I treated
Hmm.
drugs,
Hmm.
and using food and or alcohol as a means to cope and self-soothe and all of these different things that may not always be the best usage of those things. And I try not to take too strict of a stance when it comes to those things, because food can be a lot of things. It can be love,
Hmm.
it can be relationships, it can be bonding, it can be all of these like really fantastic things, and it can also be abused. So
Hmm.
that was the sort of the common ground that I initially was aiming to find with people is, let's just assume that we both struggle with something and have struggled with something, and
Hmm.
how do we develop better options, better coping skills and coping mechanisms, which could be exercise, it could be better sleep, it could be encouraging you to find a great therapist, that kind of thing, that just kind of helps put all the pieces of the puzzle in the best manner that we can.
Hmm. Interesting. Great insights, man. Great insights, relating with your journey with drugs to people's addiction to different types of foods as well.
Thank you.
Yep. And what something we've done here too is we talk about different, if people are craving a particular type of food, then that they have a certain emotional blockage that they have yet to deal with. So somebody's craving sugar, they have a bitterness towards life. Somebody's craving fried foods, they have a lot of resentment inside of them. And so I can tell by what somebody's craving, what emotional component they have going on with it. And so we help deal with that too. But you come up with all this too. That's awesome. Really
Yeah,
cool.
it's
So what are you doing different in your gym now? And by the way, I know I've said this before, but you have some great pictures on your wall. Beautiful, beautiful lady. that you get right behind over your shoulder is really, really awesome.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll touch on that real quick before I forget. But it's for I'm not sure if this will be a video cast or just an audio cast. But I'm fortunate to have some beautiful pictures of my wife, Marissa, and myself. And then I have two boys. My oldest is from my first marriage. His name is Jackson. I'm not sure when this will be released, but Jackson will be turning 17 in just a couple of weeks. And then I have my little boy with my wife, Marissa, and his name is Sebastian, and Sebastian is 7. So that's what I'm most proud of. And then certainly in secondary of nature, I'm obviously very proud of the work that we do at the studio. So
Awesome.
thank you.
Awesome. Well, tell us about the work you do at your studio.
Sure. So when I started this business, what I wanted was I remembered what it was like when I first went into a gym, and it was pretty intimidating. As I mentioned, I'm a pretty small framed guy,
Hmm.
and the average man probably outweighs me by at least 50 pounds, and that's just to be at a
Hmm.
U.S. average.
Hmm.
And so I walked into a gym, and I'm like, wow, there are no other adult men who look like I do.
So when you say small frame, can you put some numbers to that? So people,
Sure, for sure,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. I've got no shame. I'm 5'9". I weigh 140 pounds, so I'm pretty thin fella, but I've always been that way. And so I went into the gym, felt kind of intimidated, and while I certainly did find people that made it feel a little bit less intimidating, it was very easy to be in there and feel like, am I in the wrong place? Am I like, is this really the place for me? Um, so when I started my business, I wanted a place that just felt comfortable. A lot of people don't go to the gym. They're afraid that when they walk in, they're going to be judged, that they're going to do an exercise the wrong way, that people are going to make fun of them. And those aren't they may not necessarily be the most accurate things, but everybody's seen those gym fail videos and things like that. And I think that's someone's worst nightmare is I never want to picture being that person that someone is filming in a gym doing something that I shouldn't be. So I wanted a gym that just felt more comfortable. And I felt like if it's a place that I'm comfortable being, then maybe other people will be too. I do tend to tell people that we are pretty ornery. And so as long as they don't mind having a little bit of crazy in their lives, they'll probably fit in just fine here. But I also wanted a place that when people come, I know how busy people are. I'm married, I have children, and the last thing that I want is to be, quote unquote, committed to a workout that takes 60 to 90 minutes out of my day. So we tend to do much shorter workouts. The workouts might last 30 to 40 minutes because I want people to go and still live a life. I want
Hmm.
you to, be able to reach your goals and not feel like you have to commit all of your extra time to being in the gym. And in addition, the way I coach nutrition is in a very similar way. I don't want you to, ruminate and think about food all the time. I just want you to find ways to make little improvements, move a couple of big rocks to get you closer to your goals, and do it in a way that, you're not being judged. I personally don't put a lot of emotional weight into the quality of people's diets. I'd much rather just say, okay, so if we were to change something, what does that thing look like to you? And get people talking about, well, I think I might need to back off on the sugar a little bit, or I might need to back off of those fatty foods that you were referencing, that kind of thing. And okay, well, let's start there. And so, there's always going to be people that say you should count calories, you should track macros, you should remove this and eliminate that. And I just don't find that to be the case for a lot of people.
Hmm.
And in a lot of cases, that um, somewhat rigid approach can actually backfire for a
Hmm.
significant portion of people. So I'd rather try to attack it from other ways,
Hmm.
in a way that just allows the client to feel in control and basically just allow me to be in the passenger seat just to say, why don't we try this and see what happens?
Hmm. Yeah, slow incremental lifestyle changes rather than a drastic change that people go on the go on a diet where they feel like they're dying. Or
Yeah. And it's the thing is as I'm sure you know in your line of work, there's always going to be exceptions. There's always a time and a place to do the aggressive thing. There's always going to be the time and the place to do the whole rip the band-aid off, 180-degree turns. That there will be people that succeed really well with those approaches. And then there's going to be a lot of people that don't. So it's just trying to, just like y'all do with your work, trying to understand who's the person in front of me and what's going to keep them on the path that they want to be on.
Yeah. So how big is your gym?
Well, in terms of square footage, the studio itself is a little over 3,000 square feet. I currently have about 90 clients that we see on a rotating basis throughout the week. So yeah.
And is this you training, or you have other trainers as well?
No, I have three other coaches that work with me here, just trying to help me kind of orchestrate what happens. So we do a style of training called semi-private. So it's not true
Mm,
one-on-one training, but it's also not group training. It's not, if you come in at 4 o'clock, we're all going to start squatting together. It's not like that. All of my clients have their own individualized programs. So
hmm
we tailor the training cycle to the individual. And so, for instance, if Mark, if you came to visit the studio and you had some time to spend with us, you'd come in and you would have your specific training cycle that you're doing that looks different from what somebody else might be doing, because we might be working around certain injuries or impairments or things like that that you're going through. And
hmm
so it's trying to modify those things so that you get the most out of your training program.
So are you merging physical therapy also with what you do, or?
No, although it's a bit confusing with the name, and I'll try to explain that a little bit better. So we do not do physical therapy here. When I started the business, I really liked the word revolution part of it because I'm an old school Beatles fan, and I liked that word in general because of the
hmm
song. But I also knew there was a sort of a secondary meaning, which revolution can mean a sudden and dramatic change. And that
hmm
was kind of the premise that I was working from is, people come to me for that dramatic change.
hmm
And in the state of Ohio, there was already a business called Revolution Fitness. And at the time that I was starting the business, I had just gotten a certification in what's called fitness therapy, which is a very much simplified version of physical therapy. I mean, like to bare bones. So I
hmm
in no way compete with a physical therapist. That's somebody that I would refer out to. But I thought, okay, if I want to keep this Revolution name, then why don't we call it Revolution Fitness and Therapy? And then I just have to be very careful about the way that I market the services, because I'm not going to go and say, oh, we can rehab your injury when that's not what we're qualified to do.
Gotcha,
So
gotcha.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I see revolution. You can use it as a way of protest, or
yeah.
I kind of use it as a to re-love as a solution.
Sure. I like it.
Mm.
I like it.
So, um, so you memberships, or do you do by sessions, or how do you roll over there?
Sure. So we do memberships, but we don't do contracts. So most of my clients train somewhere between 2 and 3 times a week. So basically, we just take our session rate, multiply it by how many times they train in a given month, and that's what they pay per month. But there's no contract, so it's not like people are stuck into 6 or 9 or 12 months to be here. We want to earn the business each month, and that way, if people aren't getting what they need to out of the service, they're not contractually bound to stay.
Gotcha. That's
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
Um, so what results have you seen in your clients? Which like something that's really outstanding.
Well, that's a really interesting question. Initially, because fat loss was that area that I said I was really attracted to. When I started, fat loss, that was our jam, and I was very aggressive in pursuing it. I was all about the numbers. I was all about getting the scale as low as we could get it, and I didn't understand enough at that time about the other side of that conversation. Is yes, you can diet somebody down and you can, pretty much chain them to a treadmill and, sweat all the weight off of them, or, whatever. Like you can do
Right.
all of those things. But then you're left with a couple of other, questions that you have to answer is number one, to what degree were they able to keep the weight off? And number two, at what cost did it happen? And I didn't know then what I know now about eating disorders. And if I had known then, I wouldn't have been as aggressive with my approach.
Mm.
So,
You just had you changed one compulsion for another.
yeah. And like anything, and I, somewhat cynically, I could say in America, we tend to take things to the extremes anyway. Moderation is not really our middle name in the continental US. And so if some is good, more than that is better, but why don't we do more than that? And that tends to lead to not always ideal outcomes. And so the example I like to give is this. Yes, I think everyone should be exercising. And in a perfect world, I think they should be doing some strength training. But if the only thing you do is strength training, it's probably going to lead to some imbalances and some things that you probably need to rectify in other places. You can even overdo water. So everything can be taken to an extreme that's no longer healthy. So if you would have asked me that question about, what are the results that you've taken people to? What are you most proud of? Back then, I would have told you, well, this is how much weight I got this person to lose.
Right.
And now I would answer that question a lot differently. I want to leave people in a better place than the way I found them. And that means I want them stronger. I want them to have a better relationship with themselves and their bodies. And where necessary, I want to make sure they're getting in to see a good therapist. Because ultimately, what you tend to find is that by the time someone comes to me, they've already been through more than one rodeo. And there's probably a good chance that there are some things that they need to work out that happened probably 30, 40, 50 years ago in their lives, this is still the cross that they're trying to carry. And I don't have all the tools to solve that. So while exercise performs a lot of great functions for people, and having a pretty good nutritionally sound diet, does a lot of good for a lot of people. Mm-hmm. Some people really need a great person to talk to kind of unpack and unwind some of those gaps in their lives. And so if I can get someone stronger, get someone to look in the mirror and not hate themselves, get them to eat a little bit better, and have a good sounding board for the things that are really bogging them down, then what the scale says isn't as important to me anymore. And I say that as somebody who, like I said, was really into what that scale said for a long time, but now there's just a bigger picture that I hopefully can impress on people.
Yeah, you work with the person as a whole.
Yeah, and I think that the term holistic gets unfortunately pretty bastardized, but it is kind of that same thought process.
Awesome. Well, how do people get to know you? How can they get in touch with you?
Sure. So if you can spell the name, it's a lot of vowels. It's what I call the Dutch curse. So I write a blog. It's a weekly blog. That's if you can find my name, it's jasonleenaarts.com. I put out a blog every Tuesday, so you can read all that content for free and see if my approach to things is something that resonates with people. I'm very active on Instagram. I'm also kind of ornery on Instagram, but if you can spell.
What do you mean? You mentioned that a couple of times. What do you mean by ornery?
We're kind of naughty. So yeah, I think the best way to say it is this, and I'll give you like a fly on the wall snapshot of what it's like being a client at Rev Fit. There are a lot of things that are said in a gym setting, and if you have a slightly juvenile sense of humor, it's very easy to find, say, the sexual innuendo in those statements. And so we're pretty quick to jump on those things just to make the atmosphere a little bit more lively. And I'll pepper a lot of that stuff into my Instagram and my content, because it's like, well, if you train here, you already hear those things, and you can hear that we think it's funny and we have a good time, and it's not meant to but it's colorful. Yeah. And like I said, a little while ago, I wanted a place that felt comfortable for me to come to. And I know that with that, you can have an all-inclusive, welcoming, warm atmosphere, but it won't feel comfortable to every single person that walks in the door. So, it's like a lot of things. You can be really good at certain things, but you can't be really good at everything. And so I know that there's a certain kind of person that will walk through these doors and they'll go, this is my home. Yeah. This is my place. These are my people. And then somebody else might go, okay, I get it, but I think I want something else. And that's fair. That's why when I look at things like competition, I have no shortage of it. And there'll be certain people that do really well at one place, and maybe this won't be the perfect place for them. But yeah, I would say between my writings on jasonleenaarts.com,
You got to feel
and
what you're about.
yeah,
Yeah.
and then check out the content on Instagram. I do like to take the steam out of a lot of stuff in nutrition because there's a lot of fear mongering that happens with
Mm-hmm.
health and nutrition. And I try to really kind of poke the holes in that because I think when you lead people by fear, you're already off on the wrong foot. And
Gotcha.
and so yeah.
Yeah, you can say a lot of things we do here could be kind of ornery as well. And for people, I'm very straightforward in our coaching,
Yeah,
and like truth is truth. And if you don't like truth, if you're attached to your lies or your perspective, then what we're doing here is probably not for you. But if
sure,
you're into like let's really make some changes quickly, then let's start doing that.
sure.
Yeah, I was raised through the '60s, and back in the '60s, blacks made fun of Italians, Italians made fun of Jews, Jews made fun of this. Everybody's making fun of. Everybody was sending jokes out, and and laughing about the idiosyncrasies in our upbringings and our cultures. And when we could laugh about all that stuff, instead of it being like you're hurting my feelings with it, we're able to celebrate, laugh at our differences and celebrate our humanity. Because no matter what people had, everybody else had their own crap anyway. May as well just laugh at it all and realize we're all in this together. So yeah, the politically correct stuff. If you're into that, probably what we do here is not your type of cup of tea either. So
Yeah, it's I certainly grew up in a certain era where there were certain conversations, or as you said, certain jokes, certain verbiage that
mm,
was I don't want to say acceptable because maybe that's not the right way to say it, but it was certainly more commonplace.
right.
And I'll go this direction with the conversation. I remember when the term retard was a way to both insult someone and describe someone. And I have a child who's on the autism spectrum. And as I've watched him grow up and I've been more involved in, seeing the lives and livelihood
Mm-hmm.
of other people who have children that are on the spectrum, you realize how um, maybe it's not the most appropriate word to use,
Mm-hmm.
unless, of course, someone struggles with, clinically mental retardation. And so I think there's certain places where the verbiage can change
Mm-hmm.
because you
I
you
agree.
realize that, like, okay, maybe this isn't the best way to describe a person or a circumstance. And like a lot of things, you evolve your understanding and the way you want to approach something. But to your point, I do think we need to celebrate humanity. I do think that we need to find the light in certain
Our differences.
conversations
Yep.
because it's easy to fall into black and white dichotomous
Yep.
ways of thinking that aren't always best serving. So
Yep. You said this and you hurt my feelings and blah blah. If I hurt your, if you don't like the way I say something, then say, hey, can you please not say it? Cool.
right,
Awesome. I'm good. I'm good with that.
yeah, for sure,
No harm, no foul,
yeah,
and make the changes and go on down the road.
yeah.
Any, anyway, so we can find you on Instagram, can find you through your blog. And Jason, I think you're up to something beautiful in your area. And I'd love to hear more about you. And maybe one day get to meet you and your beautiful wife.
Thank you. I appreciate the time.
And I have one quick question I ask at the end of every podcast.
Sure.
And my question is, what do you love about life?
Um, this will come back to things that I talked about in the introduction, and I try not to get too woo about it, and certainly not too cliche about it. But I have to remind myself, based on the life that I've lived and the things that I've gone through, that I'm very fortunate to be alive. I sadly lost my father to cancer when he was 59, and 59, in my opinion, is way too young to die. And more often than not, I wake up and I'm very grateful for that first breath.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm.
I have to remind myself that that breath is a gift. And I try to remind people that come into my world, remember that this is your gift. If you have this opportunity to wake up every morning and you take that first breath, that's the greatest gift that you have that day.
Mm.
So do something with it. And so I'm fortunate to be alive. I'm fortunate to have an amazing wife, two beautiful boys, a thriving business, great coaches working for me, and a body that allows me to experience it to the fullest. And to the fullest doesn't mean perfectly, just in a way that I can celebrate it and share time with you and hopefully benefit even
Mm.
one of your listeners today.
Awesome. Thank you, Jason.
Thank
Thank you
you.
for being on the show. Really appreciate you, dude.
Thanks for having me.
You're welcome.